Commander Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of the Defiant, staring at the massive structure before him. The Galactic Council Station was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It stretched for miles in every direction, a city in space that housed thousands of different alien species. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked at its ports, some small like the Defiant, others large enough to carry entire cities. Jake had been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Earth was finally joining the Galactic Council. Humanity would take its place among the stars alongside species that had been traveling space for thousands of years. It was supposed to be the greatest day in human history. Katie Brooks stood beside him, reviewing her notes one last time. She was Earth's lead diplomat, chosen specifically for her ability to understand and work with the many different cultures they had encountered. She had spent months learning the customs and languages of a dozen different species. Today she would present humanity's final petition for membership. The docking procedure was smooth. The Defiant settled into its berth and Jake led his crew through the airlock. The station's interior was breathtaking. The main corridor was wide enough to fit 10 buses side by side, with ceilings that rose hundreds of feet overhead. Aliens of every description moved through the space. Some walked, others floated, and a few slithered or rolled. The air carried a mixture of smells, some pleasant, others strange to human senses. A Zentari diplomat named Velkara met them at the entrance. She was tall and thin, with forearms and skin that shifted colors based on her mood. Currently, she displayed a warm blue, which Jake had learned meant friendliness. Velkara had been their guide and friend throughout the application process. "Welcome, humans," Velkara said in perfect English. The translator device she wore made communication easy. "Today is a great day for your species. The Council is eager to welcome you." Katie smiled and thanked her. The group followed Velkara through the massive corridors toward the Council chambers. Along the way, they passed markets and gathering places where different species mingled. Some aliens stopped to stare at the humans. Humanity was still a novelty here, a young race just beginning to explore the galaxy. The Council chambers were enormous. Thousands of seats rose in circular tiers around a central platform. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in those seats, each one wearing the symbols of their homeworld. At the very top sat the Council of Elders, the leaders who made the most important decisions for the entire galaxy. Jake and Katie walked to the central platform. The room fell silent. Katie began her presentation, speaking clearly about Earth's achievements, its values, and its desire to contribute to the galactic community. She talked about human art, science, and philosophy. She explained how humanity had unified after centuries of conflict and was ready to be a responsible member of the Council. The elders listened carefully. When Katie finished, the head elder, a being named Thon who resembled a floating jellyfish, spoke. His voice was deep and resonated through the chamber. "Humanity has shown great promise. Your species has advanced quickly and learned much. The Council is prepared to grant you full membership." Cheers erupted from the human delegation. Jake felt a surge of pride. They had done it. Earth was officially part of the Galactic Council. But the celebration was short-lived. Thon raised several tentacles for silence. "However, we must discuss an urgent matter immediately. An emergency session has been called. All species must attend." The mood in the chamber shifted instantly. The colorful celebration vanished, replaced by dark tension. Velkara's skin turned a deep purple, which Jake knew meant fear. Other aliens began speaking in hushed, worried tones. The council chambers sealed. Every representative present was locked in. Security protocols activated throughout the station. Jake looked at Katie, who appeared as confused as he felt. Thon spoke again, his voice grave. "The Devourers have returned." A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Aliens of every species began shouting, some in fear, others in disbelief. Jake had no idea what Devourers were, but the reaction told him everything he needed to know. This was something terrible. It took several minutes for order to return. Thon projected an image above the central platform. It showed a region of space at the galaxy's edge. A massive fleet of machines was visible, millions of them moving toward council space like a dark cloud. 10,000 years ago, Thon explained, the Devourers nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy. They are ancient machines built by a long-dead civilization. Their only purpose is to consume. They break down entire planets for resources, destroy all organic life, and move on to the next system. Every species in this chamber exists because our ancestors fled before them. We escaped to this region of the galaxy and hoped they would never find us. The image zoomed in on individual machines. They came in many sizes, from small fighters to massive ships the size of moons. Their design was unlike anything Jake had seen. They looked organic, almost alive, but were clearly mechanical. Our long-range sensors detected them 3 days ago, Thon continued. They are 6 months away from reaching our territory. We have no time to waste. The Council's decision is final. We evacuate. Every species, every world, every being will leave through the jump gates. We will flee to the Andromeda Galaxy and rebuild there. Katie stepped forward. Wait, you're saying we have to abandon Earth? Just leave it behind? There is no choice, Thon said. The Devourers cannot be fought. They are too many, too powerful. Every species that has tried to stand against them has been destroyed. Survival requires retreat. The jump gates will open in 5 months. All Council species must be ready to leave. Jake's mind raced. Abandon Earth? Give up Sol System Mars, the colonies on Europa and Titan? Just run away? It seemed impossible. Humanity had just joined the galaxy, and now they were being told to leave everything behind. The Council session continued for hours. Species after species pledged to evacuate. Plans were made for the massive exodus. Ships would be prepared. Populations organized, essential supplies gathered. It was the largest coordinated effort in galactic history. When the session finally ended, Jake and Katie returned to the Defiant in silence. They had come to celebrate and left with news of an unstoppable enemy. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake and Katie reviewed all the data the Council had shared about the Devourers. The more they learned, the more impossible the situation seemed. Earth's governments convened immediately upon their return. The president of the United Earth Alliance, along with leaders from every nation and colony, gathered to hear the news. Jake and Katie presented everything they had learned. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some leaders argued for evacuation. The Galactic Council had thousands of years of experience. If they said running was the only option, perhaps humanity should listen. But others disagreed. Earth was humanity's home. The colonies were built with blood and sacrifice. How could they just abandon everything? In the end, the vote was overwhelming. Humanity would not run. They would stand and fight. Katie was given the task of informing the Council. She sent the message, knowing how it would be received. The reply came within hours. Velkara appeared on the screen, her skin a confused mixture of colors. Katie, please reconsider. Your species will be destroyed. There is no shame in survival. Please come with us. Katie's response was simple. We appreciate your concern, but humanity's answer is no. We will defend our home, the galaxy prepared to run. Only humanity stood its ground. The evacuation of the galaxy was the most remarkable event in recorded history. Billions of beings from thousands of worlds packed their belongings and prepared to leave. Massive transport ships appeared at every Council world, ready to carry entire populations through the jump gates to Andromeda. The exodus would take 5 months, and every species worked frantically to be ready. Humanity watched it all happen while preparing for war. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's entire defense fleet. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Every ship that could fly was pressed into service. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with weapons. Mining ships became mobile defense platforms. Luxury cruise liners were converted into troop transports. If it could move through space, humanity found a way to make it fight. The construction yards above Earth worked day and night. New ships rolled out every day, each one designed specifically to fight the Devourers. Human engineers studied the data the Council had provided, looking for any weakness in the machine swarm. They found patterns in how the Devourers attacked, how they moved, how they consumed resources. It wasn't much, but it was something. Katie Brooks divided her time between Earth and the Council station. She maintained diplomatic contact with the evacuating species, hoping some might change their minds and stay to help. None did. The fear of the Devourers was too deep, too ancient. Most species could trace their history back to the last Devourer invasion. Their oldest stories and myths spoke of the machines that ate worlds. Running was not cowardice to them. It was wisdom earned through 10,000 years of survival. Velkara met with Katie one last time before her people departed. They sat in a small cafe on the council station, drinking beverages from their respective worlds. The station was nearly empty now. Most species had already left. Only a skeleton crew remained to operate the jump gates and help the final evacuees. "I still don't understand," Velkara said, her skin a sad gray. "Why won't you come with us? Your species could thrive in Andromeda. You would be welcomed, honored even. Why choose death?" Katie sipped her coffee and thought carefully about her answer. "My people have a saying, home is where the heart is. Earth isn't just a planet to us, it's where we came from, where we evolved, where every human who ever lived was born. Our history is written in Earth's soil. Our ancestors are buried there. How can we just leave that behind?" "But you would be alive," Velkara insisted. "You could build new homes, create new history. The dead don't need you to die with them." "Maybe not," Katie agreed. "But we need to know we tried. Humanity has faced extinction before. We've fought wars, survived plagues, overcome disasters. We've never had perfect odds. We've always been the underdog. And somehow we always survived by fighting, not running." Velkara's skin shifted to a deep purple. "You're going to die, Katie, all of you. The Devourers cannot be beaten. I've seen the historical records. Species with technology far beyond yours tried to fight. They all fell. Some lasted weeks, others mere days. None survived." "Then we'll be in good company," Katie said with a sad smile. "But we have to try. It's who we are." They hugged goodbye. Velkara boarded the last transport to Andromeda, crying tears that sparkled like diamonds. Katie watched the ship depart, wondering if she would ever see her friend again. The jump gates closed one by one. Each closure was marked by a massive burst of energy that lit up the surrounding space. The galaxy grew quieter with each gate that shut down. Ancient cities fell silent. Worlds that had been inhabited for millennia became empty. Only automated systems remained, keeping the lights on in places where no one lived anymore. And humanity stood alone. Captain Greg Turner commanded the defense station at the outer rim of human space. It was the furthest point from Earth, the first place the Devourers would reach. The station wasn't large or particularly well-armed, but it had the best sensors humanity could build. Its job was simple: see the enemy coming and give everyone else as much warning as possible. Greg and his crew of 50 knew they probably wouldn't survive the first attack. They accepted that. Someone had to be the early warning system, and they volunteered. The station became their home for the next 3 months as they waited for the Devourers to arrive. Back on Earth, engineer Lily Chen worked in an abandoned alien facility. When the council species evacuated, they left behind equipment and technology they couldn't take through the jump gates. Lily's team scoured these facilities looking for anything useful. They found manufacturing equipment, weapons, power systems, and most importantly, data. The council species had been fighting and running from the Devourers for 10,000 years. They knew more about the machines than they had shared. Lily found old battle reports, sensor logs, and tactical analyses buried in forgotten databases. She spent weeks reading through it all, searching for something that might help. One night, working late in the lab, Lily found something interesting. She called in her colleagues, scientists Ben Patterson and Sophie Grant. The three of them reviewed the data together. "Look at this," Lily said, pointing to a series of graphs on her screen. "Every battle against the Devourers follows the same pattern. The machines arrive, they assess the enemy, and then they attack in coordinated waves. The species being attacked usually tries to evacuate while fighting a rear guard action. The Devourers adapt to the defensive tactics and eventually overwhelm them." "Right," Ben said. "We knew that. They're too many and too adaptable." "But look what happens when a species tries to stand and fight in one location," Lily continued, pulling up another file. "The Devourers struggle. Not much, but there's a measurable decrease in their efficiency. They're designed to pursue fleeing targets, to hunt down escaping ships. When an enemy doesn't run, their attack patterns become less effective." Sophie leaned closer to the screen. "How much less effective?" "Not enough to matter," Lily admitted. "The species that tried to make a stand still lost. But it took longer. The Devourers needed more time to overwhelm them, and in one case, about 8,000 years ago, a species called the Kreen held out for almost 6 months before falling." 6 months, Ben repeated. "The council species gave them up for dead after 2 weeks. They assumed the Kreen were destroyed quickly. The three scientists looked at each other. It wasn't much, but it was hope. If the Devourers were less efficient against enemies that stood their ground, maybe humanity had a chance. Not a good chance, but a chance nonetheless. They brought their findings to Admiral Morrison. Jake reviewed the data carefully, then shared it with his tactical staff. Plans were adjusted. The defense strategy shifted. Instead of trying to fight and retreat like the Council species had done, humanity would anchor itself. Every defensive position would be held to the last ship. No retreat, no escape plans, just pure stubborn resistance. The waiting was the hardest part. Months passed slowly. Humanity prepared as best they could, but there was only so much that could be done. They were one species against a force that had consumed thousands. The odds were impossible. Captain Turner's station detected the Devourers on a cold Tuesday morning. The sensors lit up with contacts, thousands of them, then millions. The swarm was larger than anyone had imagined. It stretched across light years of space, a dark cloud of machines moving with terrible purpose. Greg sent the warning back to Earth, then ordered his crew to battle stations. The Devourers would reach them in hours. He recorded a final message to his family, telling them he loved them and was proud to serve. His crew did the same. They were scared but ready. Admiral Morrison received the warning and activated humanity's defense plan. Every ship moved to its assigned position. Every weapon was armed. Every soldier, pilot, and crew member prepared for the fight of their lives. Katie Brooks sat in her office on Earth, looking at a photo of Velcara. She wondered if her friend had reached Andromeda safely. She hoped so. Someone should survive to remember this day. The Devourers reached Captain Turner's station right on schedule. The machines didn't bother with communication or warnings. They simply attacked. The station's weapons fired, destroying dozens of small Devourer units. But dozens meant nothing when millions more kept coming. Greg's final transmission was brief. "They're here. God help us all." Then the station went silent. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The Devourer swarm moved through space like a living thing. From a distance, it looked like a dark cloud. But up close, it was millions of individual machines working in perfect harmony. Small fighters the size of cars swarmed in groups of thousands. Medium vessels the size of battleships carried heavy weapons. And behind them came the massive ones, planet killers so large they had their own gravity. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Screens showed the swarm's progress through human space. They had destroyed Captain Turner's station in less than 3 hours. Now they were moving toward the outer colonies, where humanity's second line of defense waited. The defense of the mining colony on Titan was commanded by Admiral Morrison's old friend, Commander Pete Hayes. Pete had 200 ships under his command positioned around Saturn's largest moon. It wasn't much against millions of machines, but the plan wasn't to win. It was to learn. The Devourers reached Titan 30 hours after destroying Turner's station. Pete's ships opened fire at maximum range. Missiles streaked through space, intercepting the smaller Devourer units. Laser batteries carved through their formations. Railguns launched solid metal slugs at relativistic speeds, punching through machine hulls. The Devourers responded exactly as predicted. They formed into attack waves and charged forward. Their weapons were powerful, energy beams that could slice through ship armor like paper. The first wave hit Pete's defensive line and destroyed 15 ships in minutes. But Pete's ships didn't retreat. That was the key difference. The Council species would have pulled back, tried to regroup, given ground to buy time. Pete's orders were clear. Hold position no matter what. Every ship stayed exactly where it was and kept fighting. The Devourers adapted quickly. They changed their attack pattern, focusing fire on individual ships to overwhelm them. More human vessels exploded or went dark. But while the machines focused on the ships, they weren't attacking Titan itself. The colony had time to send data back to Earth. Information about Devourer weapons, tactics, and movement patterns. Pete died when his flagship was destroyed, taking out a large Devourer vessel with it. His last words were transmitted to every human ship in the system. Make them pay for every inch. The battle for Titan lasted 8 hours. When it ended, all 200 human ships were destroyed or disabled, but the colony's population had evacuated to underground shelters, and more importantly, the data they gathered was already being analyzed by Lily Chen's team. Lily worked without sleep, processing the battle information. Sophie Grant worked beside her, running simulations based on the new data. Ben Patterson coordinated with weapons designers, suggesting modifications to human systems based on what they learned. The breakthrough came from Sophie. She had been studying the way devourers communicated with each other. The machines used a form of quantum entanglement to share information instantly across vast distances. Every unit was connected to every other unit, forming a massive network. They're not thinking individually, Sophie explained to Admiral Morrison during an emergency meeting. Each machine is like a cell in a body. They receive instructions from somewhere central and execute them perfectly. That's why they're so coordinated. But it's also a weakness. How? Jake asked. Because they're predictable, Sophie said. Once they receive instructions, they follow them exactly. They don't improvise like we do. If we can figure out what instructions they're following, we can predict their next move. Can we disrupt their communications? Jake asked. Maybe, Lily said. But there's something else. I think there's a central hub somewhere, a main control unit that coordinates the entire swarm. If we could find it and destroy it, the whole network might collapse. It was the first real hope they'd had. Jake ordered every sensor in human space to start looking for the hub. Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their advance. The battle for Mars was the largest engagement in human history. Admiral Morrison personally commanded the defense from the bridge of the Earth vessel Victory. He had assembled over 1,000 ships, everything humanity could spare while still defending Earth. The fleet formed a defensive sphere around Mars, with overlapping fields of fire and coordinated attack patterns. The Devourers came at them with everything they had. The space around Mars became a storm of energy and metal. Human ships fought with desperate courage, holding their positions even as the Devourers tore through their ranks. Every captain knew the plan. Don't retreat, don't scatter, fight as one coordinated unit, and it worked better than anyone hoped. The Devourers expected the human fleet to break apart. Their attack patterns were designed to exploit panic and disorder. But the human ships stayed in formation, covering each other, working together. When one ship was damaged, others moved to protect it. When ammunition ran low, supply ships pushed through danger to deliver more. Every captain trusted every other captain. Every crew worked perfectly with every other crew. The Devourers started taking heavy losses. Not enough to stop them, but more than they expected. Their attack patterns shifted, adapted, but each adaptation took time. And during that time, human weapons kept firing. Lily's modifications proved crucial. She had redesigned human missiles to be less predictable. Instead of flying straight at their targets, they jinked and weaved, making random course corrections. The Devourers' defensive system struggled to track them. More missiles got through, caused more damage. Jake watched the battle unfold from the Victory's bridge. They were losing, but slowly. Every hour they held was an hour more than the Council species had managed. Every Devourer they destroyed was one less machine threatening Earth. Then something unexpected happened. The Devourer swarm stopped advancing. For the first time since entering human space, the machines paused their attack. They hung in space, still and silent, like they were thinking, "What are they doing?" Jake's tactical officer asked. "Analyzing," Sophie said from the science station. She had insisted on being on the bridge for the battle. "They're trying to understand why we're not running. It doesn't match their programming." Katie Brooks, who had also joined Jake on the Victory, stepped forward. "Can we communicate with them?" "I don't know," Sophie admitted. "They're machines. They might not even have the concept of communication. But we could try." Jake nodded. "Do it, broadcast on all frequencies. Tell them we're not going anywhere." Katie sat at the communications station and began broadcasting. She spoke in English, then had the computer translate into every language in the database. She kept the message simple. "We are humanity. This is our home. We will defend it. If you want Earth, you'll have to go through us." No one expected a response, but after 10 minutes of silence, every screen in the fleet lit up with the same image. It was mathematical, a series of equations and symbols that Sophie recognized as a form of universal language based on physics and geometry. "They're asking a question," Sophie said, her voice shaking with excitement. "They want to know why we fight when fleeing is more efficient for survival." Katie thought for a moment, then replied, "Because some things are worth more than survival. Home, dignity, and the choice to stand for what matters." The Devourers didn't respond immediately. The pause stretched to an hour, then 2. The machines just hung in space, their weapons inactive. Human ships remained at battle stations, ready to fight, but the battle had stopped. Then Ben Patterson made his discovery. He had been coordinating with sensor stations across human space, looking for the central hub. And he found it. Deep in the heart of the Devourer swarm, protected by layers of machines, was a massive construct unlike any other unit. It was the size of Earth's moon and radiated enormous amounts of energy. Every communication from every Devourer unit passed through it. "That's the brain," Ben said. "That's what we need to destroy." Jake looked at the tactical display. The hub was surrounded by millions of Devourer units. Getting a weapon to it would be impossible with conventional forces. But maybe, just maybe, a small ship with a good crew and a lot of luck could slip through. "Get me a volunteer crew," Jake said. "We're going to kill their brain." The call for volunteers went out across the entire human fleet. Admiral Morrison made it clear that this was a one-way mission. A small team would take a stealth ship deep into the Devourer swarm, reach the central hub, and destroy it. The chances of survival were almost zero. The chances of success were barely better. But without attempting it, humanity would lose eventually. The Devourers had paused to analyze the human response, but they would resume their attack soon. Within an hour, Jake had more volunteers than he could use. Thousands of men and women were willing to sacrifice themselves for a slim chance at victory. From all those brave souls he chose carefully, the team needed to be small, skilled, and able to work together under impossible pressure. Captain Melissa Harper was selected to lead the mission. She was one of humanity's best pilots, with 20 years of experience flying in dangerous situations. Before the war, she had been a rescue pilot, known for going into places others considered too risky. She had saved hundreds of lives by flying through asteroid fields, radiation storms, and ship graveyards. If anyone could navigate through millions of hostile machines, it was her. Ryan Cole became the team's tactical officer. He was young, only 26, but he had a natural gift for strategy. During the battle for Mars, he had coordinated 36 ships from a small patrol vessel, creating attack patterns that destroyed 5 times as many Devourers as expected. His mind worked differently than others, seeing possibilities where most saw only problems. Nina Foster handled the technology that would make the mission possible. She was an engineer who had worked with Lily Chen on adapting alien technology. She had personally designed the stealth system for the ship they would use, a prototype called the Valiant. The system used alien cloaking technology combined with human innovations to make the ship nearly invisible. Nearly, but not completely. If the Devourers looked closely enough, they would find it. The rest of the team consisted of Marines and technical specialists. Each one knew they probably wouldn't come home. They recorded messages for their families, said their goodbyes, and prepared themselves mentally for what was ahead. The Valiant was a small ship, built for speed and stealth rather than combat. It had minimal weapons and armor. All available space was dedicated to the cloaking system and the virus Sophie Grant had designed. The virus was humanity's secret weapon, a piece of code specifically created to attack the Devourer's central coordination system. It wouldn't destroy the hub, but it would confuse it, disrupt the perfect communication between machines, and make them vulnerable. Sophie explained the virus to Melissa before the launch. The Devourers think in patterns. Everything they do follows predictable algorithms. This virus introduces randomness into their system. It makes them uncertain, forces them to second-guess their own data. For machines that depend on perfect information and coordination, uncertainty is poison. Will it work? Melissa asked. Honestly, I don't know, Sophie admitted. We've never been able to test it on a real Devourer system. But the theory is sound. If you can upload it directly to the hub's core, it should spread through their entire network within minutes. And if it doesn't work, then you die for nothing and we all die shortly after. Sophie's bluntness was appreciated. No one wanted false hope at this point. The Valiant launched from the Victory with minimal ceremony. There was no time for grand speeches or celebrations. Melissa guided the ship away from the human fleet and toward the Devourer swarm. Nina activated the cloaking system and the Valiant vanished from human sensors. If the system worked as designed, it had also vanished from Devourer sensors. The journey into the swarm was the most terrifying experience of Melissa's life. She had flown through dangerous situations before, but nothing compared to this. The Devourers surrounded them completely, Machines of every size filled space in all directions. Some were so close that Melissa could see details on their hulls, strange markings and symbols left by whatever civilization built them millions of years ago. Ryan mapped out a route using the sensor data they had gathered from previous battles. He found patterns in how the Devourers moved, narrow gaps in their formation where the Valiant might slip through unnoticed. It was like threading a needle while blindfolded, except the needle was moving and the thread was a spaceship. They passed through the outer swarm after 12 hours of careful flying. No alarms, no attacks. The cloaking system was working, but the tension never decreased. Everyone aboard knew that a single mistake, one moment of bad luck, would give them away. The Devourers would destroy them before they could even think about running. Nina monitored the cloaking system constantly. It was draining enormous amounts of power. She made adjustments, shutting down non-essential systems to keep the cloak active. Life support was reduced to minimum levels. The temperature dropped and the air became thin. The crew endured it without complaint. As they pushed deeper into the swarm, they saw things that made them understand the true scope of what they faced. They passed the wreckage of ancient battles, destroyed ships from species that fought the Devourers thousands of years ago. Some wrecks were so old they had become part of the Devourer formation, incorporated into the machine swarm as debris. Ryan found what looked like the remains of a massive space station, torn apart and scattered across several cubic miles. The design was alien, unlike anything in the Council database. Whatever species built it had been gone for a very long time. Yet the Devourers kept moving, kept consuming, kept following their ancient programming to destroy organic life wherever they found it. "How long have they been doing this?" one of the Marines asked quietly. "Millions of years at least," Nina answered. "Maybe longer. And they'll keep doing it until someone stops them." The hub appeared on their sensors after 30 hours of travel. It was enormous, a construct so large it had its own gravitational field. The hub didn't look like the other Devourer units. It was older, more complex, covered in structures that served purposes the crew could only guess at. Energy radiated from it in waves, visible even through the Valiant's filters. "That's where we need to go," Ryan said, marking a location on the tactical display. "They're at what looks like the core. That's where the main processing happens. We upload the virus there and it spreads to every unit in the swarm." Melissa studied the approach. The hub was surrounded by layers of defensive machines, thousands of them, positioned in perfect formation. The gaps Ryan had found in the outer swarm didn't exist here. The defenses were too tight, too carefully arranged. "We'll have to fight our way in," Melissa said. "The moment we fire weapons, they'll see us. Then we make it count," Nina said. She had prepared for this possibility. The Valiant carried a small number of very powerful missiles, each one packed with enough explosive to destroy a large ship. "We go in fast, hit them hard, and don't stop until we reach the core." The crew prepared for combat. Ryan selected their targets carefully, identifying which defensive units to destroy first to create a path to the core. Nina armed the missiles and prepared to drop the cloaking system. The Marines checked their weapons, ready to fight if the ship was boarded. Melissa took a deep breath and gripped the controls. "Everyone ready? Once we start, there's no going back." The crew confirmed they were ready. Melissa counted down from 3, then dropped the cloak and fired all weapons. The Valiant screamed toward the hub at maximum speed. Missiles launched, each one finding its target. Explosions blossomed across the defensive formation. Devourer units reacted immediately, turning their weapons toward the sudden threat. Energy beams lanced through space, missing the Valiant by meters as Melissa threw the ship into a wild spiral. Ryan called out targets, and Melissa fired as she flew. More explosions, more destroyed Devourers, but there were so many of them. For every unit they destroyed, 10 more moved to block their path. The Valiant took hits. Armor melted under energy beams. Systems sparked and failed. Nina worked frantically to keep essential functions online, rerouting power around damaged sections. One of the Marines died when his compartment was exposed to space. But they kept moving forward. Melissa flew like she had never flown before, pushing the ship beyond its design limits. Ryan's targeting was perfect, each shot counting for maximum impact. They were going to make it. Against all odds, they were going to reach the core. Then a massive Devourer vessel moved to block them. It was one of the large ones, a planet killer, its weapons charged, preparing to vaporize the Valiant with a single shot. Ryan made a split-second decision. I'm taking manual control of the dorsal turret. Keep flying, Captain. He fired continuously at the large vessel, trying to damage it enough to disrupt its attack. The weapons barely scratched its armor, but Ryan kept firing, kept trying, giving Melissa precious seconds to find another route. The planet killer fired. Ryan's compartment took the full force of the beam. He died instantly, buying the time Melissa needed to slip past. The core was ahead, less than a mile away. Nina prepared the virus for upload. They just needed to get close enough to establish a data connection. More devourers closed in. The Valiant was dying, systems failing one by one, but it still moved forward, pushed by Melissa's will and Nina's desperate repairs. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the Victory's bridge as the devourer swarm began to fall apart. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. Individual machines made small mistakes in their movements. Attack formations lost their perfect coordination, then the mistakes multiplied. Ships collided with each other. Weapons fired at wrong targets. The unity that made the devourers so terrifying dissolved into chaos. "It's working," Sophie Grant said from her station, her voice filled with wonder. "The virus is spreading through their network faster than I predicted. They're trying to isolate infected units, but they can't do it fast enough. The uncertainty is cascading." Jake didn't celebrate yet. The devourers were confused, but there were still millions of them. Confused machines with powerful weapons were still deadly. "All ships advance and engage. Target the units that are still coordinated. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet surged forward. Every ship that could still fight moved to press the advantage. They had been on the defensive for so long, taking losses and barely holding ground. Now for the first time they attacked. The battle that followed was fierce. The devourers still fought back, but their attacks were disorganized. Units that should have been supporting each other moved in opposite directions. Defensive formations had gaps. The perfect machine coordination was gone, replaced by individual units making independent decisions. And individual machines, no matter how powerful, could be defeated by coordinated human tactics. Lily Chen watched the battle data flow into her lab. She had stayed on Earth during the fighting, continuing to analyze and adapt. Now she saw patterns in the devourer confusion. Some units were trying to retreat. Others were attempting to self-destruct rather than fight inefficiently. A few seemed to be shutting down entirely, their programming unable to handle the uncertainty the virus introduced. "We can reprogram them," Lily said suddenly. She pulled up the data from several damaged devourer units humanity had captured during earlier battles. "Their hardware is still functional. If we can replace their corrupted software with something we control, we can turn them into our weapons." Her team worked frantically to develop the reprogramming code. Within hours, they had a working prototype. Human boarding teams began targeting disabled devourer units, physically connecting to their systems and uploading the new code. It didn't work every time. Some machines self-destructed rather than accept new programming, but enough succeeded that humanity gained its own force of captured machines. The turned devourers were devastating against their former allies. They knew all the tactics, all the weaknesses. They attacked with precision, targeting command units and support vessels. The machine swarm began collapsing faster. The battle raged for 3 weeks. Human losses were heavy. Hundreds of ships were destroyed. Thousands of crew members died. But they were winning. Slowly, steadily, the devourer numbers decreased. The machines that remained began retreating toward the edge of human space, their formation broken, their coordination shattered. Jake directed the pursuit personally. He wouldn't let the devourers escape to threaten humanity again later. Every machine that entered human space would be destroyed or captured. The chase led them far beyond the outer colonies, into deep space where few humans had ever traveled. The last major engagement happened near the edge of the galaxy. A group of devourer planet killers attempted to jump to faster-than-light speed and escape. Human ships caught them first. The battle was brief but intense. When it ended, the planet killers were debris and the threat was finally over. Search and rescue teams scoured the battlefield looking for survivors. They found escape pods, damaged ships, and injured crew members. On the 3rd day of searching, they found Captain Melissa Harper's pod drifting near the remains of the Devourer hub. She was unconscious, her air nearly depleted but alive. The medics said she would survive. When Melissa woke up in the hospital ship, Jake was there. He told her about the victory, about how her sacrifice and her crew's courage had saved humanity. Melissa cried for Ryan, Nina, and all the others who didn't make it. Then she asked to be assigned to the next mission. There was still work to do. While humanity celebrated its victory, Katie Brooks sat in her office composing a message. The jump gates to Andromeda had been closed, but the Council had left relay stations that could send transmissions across the intergalactic void. It would take months for a message to reach Andromeda, but Katie wanted the Council to know what happened. She wrote carefully, explaining the battle, the losses, and the victory. She explained how humanity had stood its ground and won by refusing to run. She described the virus, the captured machines, and the final pursuit, and she ended with an invitation. The galaxy was safe now. The Council species could come home. The message sent, Katie waited. Months passed. Humanity began rebuilding. Damaged ships were repaired. New ones were built. The colonies that suffered devourer attacks were restored. Memorials were erected for the fallen, their names carved in stone so they would never be forgotten. Earth returned to something like normal life, though everyone knew things had changed. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had fought the unbeatable enemy and won. The experience changed them. They were more united, more confident, more aware of their place in the universe. 6 months after the battle ended, a reply came from Andromeda. Katie read it alone first, then shared it with Jake and the human government. The message was from Velkara. The Zentari diplomat wrote that the Council was stunned by the news. They had assumed humanity was destroyed weeks after the Devourers arrived. The idea that humans not only survived but won seemed impossible. The Council required proof. Katie sent detailed records, battle footage, and sensor logs. She sent images of captured Devourer units now serving humanity. She sent it all. The second message came faster. The Council accepted the proof. They were returning home. The jump gates would reopen. The great exodus would reverse. The galaxy would be inhabited again. But Velkara added something personal at the end of her message. She wrote that the Council was afraid of what humanity had become. A species that could defeat the Devourers was not to be taken lightly. The Council wanted assurances that humanity would not turn its weapons against them. Katie laughed when she read that. She shared it with Jake, who shook his head. They ran from the fight and now they're afraid of us for winning it. Can you blame them? Katie asked. We did something they thought was impossible. We changed the rules. That's scary. Jake considered it. What should we tell them? Katie wrote the response herself. She explained that humanity fought to defend itself, not to conquer others. They had no interest in dominating the galaxy. They just wanted to live in peace on their worlds. But she also made it clear that humanity would defend itself again if necessary. They had proven they could stand against any threat. That capability wouldn't be forgotten or abandoned. The Council accepted the terms. Over the next year, the jump gates reopened one by one. Ships began returning from Andromeda, carrying populations back to their homeworlds. The galaxy slowly came back to life. Velkara was among the first to return. She met Katie at the rebuilt Council station, now jointly operated by humans and returning Council species. They hugged like the old friends they were. Velkara's skin showed colors Katie had never seen before, a mixture of joy, relief, and something else. Respect, maybe, or awe. You did it, Velkara said. You actually did it. We got lucky, Katie said modestly. No, Velkara insisted. Luck doesn't explain it. You won because you stood together when everyone else ran apart. You showed us something we had forgotten. Sometimes the only way to survive is to fight, even when the odds say you can't win. The Council convened with humanity as full members, no longer new applicants but proven defenders. The meeting was formal with speeches and ceremonies. Admiral Morrison attended in his dress uniform, representing Earth's military. Melissa Harper stood beside him, wearing her captain's insignia and the medal she received for her courage. The Council formally thanked humanity for defeating the Devourers. They offered trade agreements, technology sharing, and mutual defense pacts. But the mood was complex. Gratitude mixed with fear. Respect mixed with caution. The Council species were glad to be saved, but uncomfortable with who saved them. Jake understood. He had expected it. We'll prove ourselves over time, he told Katie after the meeting. They'll see we're not a threat. But we'll also make sure they never forget what we're capable of. The galaxy settled into a new normal. The Council species reoccupied their worlds. Trade routes reopened. Exploration resumed. But everything was different now. Humanity was no longer the young species asking for acceptance. They were the species that stood when others ran. The species that defeated the unbeatable enemy. Jake stood on Earth one evening looking up at the stars. He thought about Captain Turner, who gave the first warning. He thought about Pete Hayes, who held Titan. He thought about Ryan Cole and Nina Foster, who gave their lives to reach the Devourer hub. He thought about all the thousands who died defending humanity's home. They won, but the cost was high. Earth had scars that would take decades to heal. Colonies were damaged. Families were broken by loss. The victory wasn't clean or easy. It was bought with blood and courage and sacrifice, but it was real. Humanity had stood a